Hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian Kozak. I'm a business consultant for CloudFight, and today we're speaking with Nick Gellner, COO and co-founder of Medusa, an open source commerce platform that's quickly gaining traction among business looking for more flexibility. We'll explore how Medusa is tackling the limitations of traditional commerce platforms and what the future holds for modular open source commerce in 2025. So, Nick, super happy to have you here.
Very happy to be a guest here and my favorite topic. So excited to get into it all.
Yeah, let's talk about the topic itself because personally, I'm getting this question so many times from my friends, from my colleagues, from my surroundings. So, Nick, out of all tech options and software fields, why did you choose e-commerce?
I believe, as with many fields, I kind of stumbled into it, not necessarily on purpose in the beginning, but I come from a business background. So before being part of starting Medusa here, I worked in McKinsey and Company, where one of my specialties was working within e-commerce and doing commerce projects. So I was part of a lot of digital projects and started with one larger implementation case where we went very deep with a client into a large e-commerce implementation, working all across both the tech stack and all the physical distribution, logistics troubles you could have. This was during COVID. There was a lot of that. And it was super exciting. I felt that online commerce sort of has some of the super interesting elements of you both have sort of the tech perspective of everything working in the stack, of the creating a great user experience on the front end, but also a lot of the other part of the business side from supply chain and how you run your operations, which I felt was a great marrying from myself. And yeah, when I got the opportunity to work on Medusa, this was definitely something that an area I could see myself being in for a long time.
Yeah, sometimes they saying that e-commerce is choosing you, not you are choosing the e-commerce. Uh, but looking ahead, where is Medusa placing the most focus right now? And maybe following question to this, what do you think is still holding brands back in 2025?
Uh, Hopefully, these two things are quite married. So, what Medusa has been focused on since the very beginning has been this idea of unlocking commerce across more verticals, across more distinguished use cases than what you can with sort of traditional common commerce platforms. And for us, that have always gone through developers. So we have a lot about enabling development teams to build greater, more diversified commerce experiences. And we build a platform here which positions itself very uniquely to cater to these differentiated commerce cases. So, what does that mean for how we build and what we build? So, just to give you very short context, is Medusa is an open source commerce platform, meaning everything we've ever produced is open source in the core framework and core platform. So you can use it, you can tweak it, and you can twist it to your business needs. This is what we do really well, is getting into those fields where you say we might need some type of commerce logic, and the commerce logic we need will probably not resemble that of very traditional selling five t-shirts in 10 different colors, but more nuanced, more complex commerce, both in the B2B space or advanced D2C cases, is something we see very commonly. And you're asking now, what is holding brands back here in 2025, and in relation, what are we working on? I think there is a common pattern we've started to see emerge in the last 1 or 2 years, which we are quite excited about. I think a lot of organizations in the wake of the AI wave and in from a cost perspective as well has been starting to consider whether this buy and build decision that so many companies often face does always need to be a buy decision. And I think especially with the wake of AI, but how much we see sort of development velocity move and how much quicker tech teams are now to iterate, there is a tendency among companies now to ask, do we always need to go with a SaaS solution? Because everyone knows the limitation of going with something that is pre-built, pre-configured for you and cannot be customized. But now, even from a cost perspective and from a time to market perspective, start making more and more time to kind of own your stack and build for that. And I think this is a decision for many companies in 2025, and probably missed opportunity is to say a lot of companies are in that, should I just go with a SaaS tool and buy that, or should I build something from scratch? And I think right now a lot of companies, not just in the commerce space, but we see it extremely in the commerce space, are sort of not always aware of the opportunity of there is a in between in the middle where you can really go with an open source solution that you own and control, and then take the ownership that you usually have with a build decision. So
All right.
that's a long
Yeah.
answer for what we see of emerging trends here.
Yeah, thank you for that. But like, I've also seen the like huge evolution. Like, if I've seen, let's say, B2B platform, same scope 3 years ago, and for now on, 3 years from now on, I would say, like, if I see the scope, I would say like 80% of what you would like to have to our dear customer need to be customized, built from the scratch. Right now, it's shifting. Like, this percentage is going down. There's more things out of the box. So my next question would be kind of similar, but like, I'm talking about the evolution. What are some common challenges you see brands facing with today commerce platforms, and how modern solution evolving to meet those needs?
I think um, I think one of the interesting things that are moving in, especially in the B2B space, is the now sort of need to create more differentiated experiences. And what I mean by that is it's no longer enough to just be selling your product. You also need to make it easily accessible for your customers. And in the B2B space, the demands are getting more clear here. From the buy side, we know of a lot of B2B cases where people are willing to even pay a premium for the products if it's easier accessible, makes it easier to sell through online channels that usually save cost in the other end for companies. And is that is sort of a good indication of you need to do something, you need to move something in here. And for companies to get into this, I think because the bar is a bit higher than just, I think if you went to B2B side 5-10 years ago to make a purchase order, the experience here would be a very cumbersome, a lot of sort of clicking around, a lot of trying to build a sort of an Excel sheet copy of a web shop or similar, and it really didn't focus on any extra upselling. Really didn't focus on making it easier for the user to do or complete a purchase. And I think today it is as much about UX and the user experience as you had going back 5-10 years ago in the D2C space, where this became sort of a topic. So I think there's something moving here where brands need to be more focused on differentiating and actually creating a good user experience for purchases, even in the B2B space.
All right. Um, but like, from the other hand, in your view, what are brands balancing the trade-off between monolithic and modular platforms, and what factors drive the decision? Because for me as a business consultant, there's always the same story when I'm discussing with the customer. They're asking, okay, should I go with monolithic approach, which I heard that is like outdated, or what benefits will I have from microservices architecture?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's not a one size fits all. There is definitely places where monolith platform makes sense, especially if you want something very simple and again a bit back to this, a bit maybe a bit less differentiated, but really where you start moving into headless at first and maybe even later modular, which is a lot of what we're approaching it with Medusa here. Is you say if you start with the headless, it's a lot about decoupling what is known as the back end and the front end of your application. And what that gives you is complete sort of control on the UX experience that is served on the front end. And in the B2B space, that comes back to my point from earlier, since that UX is actually becoming part of the equation for B2B companies today, you actually need to provide a good customer experience, if not for the delight of the customer, then at least for saving yourself cost and time and support. Um, if you build sort of on a monolithic stack, you're always forced to follow the common flows that the platform already put in place for you. But the good thing about this decoupling with a headless platform is you can basically say, look, whatever logic I need from my commerce platform, I will use that and take that in. But the visual layer that you and I as a purchaser will interact with, that's completely up for me to customize and create. And that's where you get a much more unique solution than the common monolith. And I think taking that step further, and that's what we see in a lot of B2B organizations, is you have multiple systems in place. So your B2B companies today, they don't just have a single application like an ERP to run everything. They will have multiple accounting systems. You should have a PIM system. They'll have some payment gateways that might sit outside the ERP. And the complexity of a B2B stack is usually quite big and vivid. And this is where we say, so one thing is the front end layer of an e-commerce platform you present to the customers, but there is a second component to this that says the back end, the headless layer. How do you interact with all of these systems in your stack, your existing ERP, your existing PIM, your existing solution that sits around your stack that you're trying to build around? And this is where we think there is need for radical innovation, and what we try to bring to the table with Medusa, of saying let's allow all of these different solutions to participate in one stack and actually interact very seamlessly with the e-commerce platform. And that's all about our modular architecture and what we try to build with this.
You said a lot about the user experience and the headless front end, for example, solutions. And I remember like a few years ago, under the CloudFlight belt, we've created two open source products. One's for the loyalty, open loyalty. Second one is the Alokai, so headless front end. And I remember then we had some challenges because we had a customer who wanted to have the implementation from one other hand. And then we also had to evolve this product itself. And after that, we also have the open source community who was like requesting a lot of things from us. So in your case, how do you balance building a product roadmap with the expectations of your open source community? Because like, in my opinion, it's like super hard to manage. And that's why we actually separate those organizations. And then right now they are working as separate organizations.
Yes, it's a good question. And it comes back to our philosophy of building all of this. As I said in the very beginning, we build a lot for this differentiated commerce experiences, these more custom applications. And when we do that, one of the key things we've told ourselves is we will not try to solve all edge cases out of the box, but we want to enable all edge cases to be solved very well with our platform. And that's a very different focus from the likes of more traditional B2C platforms like a Shopify that always says, let's try to solve everything by building in a new API, a new feature, or maybe a new integration out there. What we say instead is we cannot predict everything all of our customers will need. But what we can enable is we can give them a very strong core set of features that we know you will need. And then you can extend from then on. Then we make it very easy for you to build custom features, custom databases, custom business logic into the platform. And that relates back to your question of saying, okay, how do we then prioritize what features to build? For us, it's much less about saying, let's build 100 or 1,000 new features, but it's more about saying, how can we enable even more of these edge cases where you and your team decide yourself, what is the custom feature I need? And can we build sort of the tooling that makes it easy for you to build these customizations? And that's one of the reasons why we've got a lot of popularity in a very short time frame here. We are today the number one open source commerce project on GitHub. And a lot of the developer interest and love we've gotten is because of this flexibility. So I think to us, that's really the core, not trying to build for everything for everyone, but instead trying to enable everything with our platform.
All right. Number one, open source. So that's what you just said. And let's stick to that. I've read somewhere on your blog that Medusa claims to offer true open source freedom. But how does that actually benefit business compared to more traditional, I would say, open source platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, um, the key reason to build open source is giving sort of this ownership back to companies, and that unlocks a few different values for businesses. Number one is cost. Number two is this ability to customize, and number three is your speed to go to market. And if I just can unpack these for a second here, the ownership you obviously get being open source, you control everything we build on the platform. And unlike some of the other platforms in this space, so more legacy solutions like Magento that have put a lot of features under a secondary license or try to almost force you to be in the Adobe Commerce type of solution, we've taken significant different stances as let's try to open source everything. So all commerce features we build uh, will be open source. If they don't start, they will always become open source. And we try to give sort of a very, very strong core open offering out of the box, and you can take ownership on that. And then you get to these benefits of much lower cost. You don't need to pay a platform fee to get started with us. There is no extra payment fees, no revenue share of GMV, no extra cuts on this part, and much less apps and integration you need to build. The only cost you would have to Medusa itself is if you choose to host with us and use our infrastructure, and that is uh, paid for and charges much less than any of these revenue sharing models. So there's the cost perspective. Customization, I think I already explained here, but that's basically just giving you that ownership to build all of these features you usually cannot do on a SaaS platform because you're a bit bound to the features they give you out of the box. We give you flexibility to build much more. And I think the time to market element is something we see more and more with sort of strong development teams. If you ever try to build a custom workflow on a Shopify or on BigCommerce type of solution, you will often find out that a blocker in how quickly you can execute is what they make available to you. So if you cannot access the underlying logic of the platform, their APIs or certain tweak to how they execute some of their own business logic and their own workflows, then it becomes extremely time consuming to build custom. And we've changed that around and instead giving you full access to the platform. That gives many developer teams a 2 to 3x faster time to market than with a traditional platform.
Yeah, and on top of that, what you're just saying is giving the business, in my opinion, a lot of security and business continuity. Because like how many times I heard our customers who just, contacting us that they are saying, hey, can we make some migration or some e-commerce project with our current setup? And I was thinking, okay, could you give us an access to the code so we can see what's inside? And it's like, yep, that's a problem because we are not owning that and some other agencies owning that. And there's so many struggles with that. So then those customers, when they feel that on their skin that this is not their own solution, that they don't have control over that, it's not helping with the business security. But
Yeah, and
maybe, yeah.
no, yeah, and if I can just add to it, I think one of the difficulties for many businesses, you don't know this necessarily when you start out, right? Because you have this set RFP of these are the 10, 15 things I want to do. And maybe you can find a platform that matches them sort of from the get-go. But we all know when you work with a commerce platform, or mostly any tech platform, but commerce especially is quickly evolving in terms of what you need and what you're trying to do from business perspective. And as your needs evolve, you would quite quickly find out that maybe you check the boxes on this RFP from day one, but on day 60, day 120, or 1 to 2 years out in the future, you have very different requirements. And that's where it becomes a blocker if those things weren't already there, part of the package and not accessible. And that's really where it's sort of you're caught there and you sit tight and you say, okay, now I cannot really move on the things I want to just because of the platform limitations.
Yep, and that's not the way where you want to basically go with a business. But like, let's maybe come back to the Medusa itself, and from your perspective, what's something in Medusa's architecture that you're especially proud of, but people often overlook?
Yeah, I think we have we have two things that initially gets overlooked, and it depends a bit on who you ask. So one thing is just the plain out of the box features you get. I think in a lot of business people's head, they when they hear open source, they're thinking, okay, that means I probably need to build almost 70-80% of the platform itself. And what we see is usually the other way around. Whenever people get started with Medusa, they get surprised that they get 70 to 80% out of the box already there. So really, how much ground of core commerce features we build into the platform is quite surprising to many. So we cover everything from your product and cart handling to very advanced promotion, multi-location setup, and multi-regional by default setups, and niche details around gift carding, around how you do customer management, and in general, our suite of features covers very, very broadly, and that benefit is you get started quickly and then you can focus on those key differentiating features that you want to build into the platform. So I think
Yeah.
that's one. And the quick second would be for me the modular architecture. A lot have been said about Mac and headless and building with an architecture where you have different systems. And at Medusa, we've taken it to an extreme where what we call building modular. And what that is basically you can think of our platform as Lego bricks. So we have all the different features we give you, whether it's a card module or product module or customer module. You can always replace that with your own solutions because we sort of build all of it in a modular fashion where these are separate entities within Medusa. So if you say, hey, I don't want to use your way of doing pricing logic or product logic for that matter, because we have that in an AP somewhere, it's very easy to break that out of Medusa and actually just work directly with your ERP or your PIM system as source of truth. And to be honest, I haven't seen that done in other platforms before.
Yeah, that's in my opinion super great to hear from obviously the customer perspective, because there's a lot of I would say um, stories around that we have something working in our business and we cannot change that because we're relying on them from several years, and changing that would occur a lot of internal problems. So the flexibility in the complex systems, that's like something which is a must have right now in my opinion. And
Yeah,
maybe
and
let's, yeah.
no, just to add to that, I think that's been one thing we heard quite commonly in industry because people have been hearing about these. Oh, you want to use a new commerce platform and you have existing systems. When then that's going to be a 1 to 2 years migration process because we need to kind of fit it to our solution and make sure we work very nicely with all of these different systems and build very bespoke implementation for each part. And I think we're trying to change that narrative a lot. And what we've seen in most of our cases is you don't necessarily need to rebuild this monster whenever you want to go with a migration to a new e-commerce platform. And especially with a modular architecture like this, instead of trying to have you build all of the middleware and all these large integrations to all the different solutions, it is much easier for you to basically replace entire domains and use your own systems instead of ours. And that really fits well in a B2B stack that's usually split across multiple different systems and reduces implementation timelines by, I think, some of our biggest projects usually don't run more than 6 months.
Yep. So let's maybe swiftly move to the customers and let's talk about them. What are some of the most interesting use cases you've seen built on Medusa that surprised you?
I think we see cases that surprise us almost every day. It's a bit of the nature of building this very differentiated type of commerce experience. I think some of the ones we've seen that are sort of more alternative is when we see, getting back to this modular architecture, when we see companies that maybe just use one or two of our modules. So in one extreme, we have someone that just use our card module to build their commerce platform on. They started out with that. They didn't use any of our other modules in the suite, and they kind of experienced as it went along that, okay, this card module works quite well. Maybe we should even consider replacing existing systems with other modules that are already there, and sort of took a much slower migration approach, sort of a more, it was quick for them to get started, but they didn't plan to migrate all on day one. They just realized this through adopting a single module in the stack, which I think talk a bit interestingly to how creative can you actually get. Well, you can just start with saying, what is a commerce case where I need a card to be there, and then build from then on. So we've done implementation cases where we power everything from order, door to store delivery in under 60 minutes, and having drivers and all that organized on the platform, both in the B2B and the B2C space actually. And we've seen subscription businesses being built, digital products, merchandising, a lot of sort of platforms where you would say, maybe this is not particularly e-commerce specific, and it doesn't always need to be. Sometimes it's just about having that commerce logic of, I need to build something that's commerce related and has this core order, card, and product angle, and then building around that sort of a very bespoke setup and bespoke solution you have.
Okay. I was thinking about the next question, and I was thinking that an interview without this topic these days wouldn't be an interview. Of course, we are talking about the AI, and the common question which usually I'm hearing from my team of developers is that, how do you see AI and automation reshaping the role of developers in commerce project over the next 2, 3, 5 years from now on?
It's such a good question, and something that excites us a lot as well. I think why we get very excited about this is, you can ask yourself a very, very sort of simple question. If you project out 5 years from now, say AI will probably mean your development team can move much quicker at much less speed than usual. And you then ask, what would be the system that matches sort of this motion very well? It will probably not be the systems that's very closed off, where you anyway cannot touch much of the logic there, or where you cannot make customizations to the systems itself. But instead, the more open the system is, the more flexible it is to touch around the workflows that are already built into it, the more customizable it is, the better it's actually positioned to leverage some of these tools to build new workflows, build new customizations, and also enable the teams, the development teams that work on and so on, to build much faster. And I think what we're seeing right now in some of the conversations we have with customers is, they expect, one of the reasons why they bet on Medusa is they expect to be able to have much more velocity in the future, to move fast on a custom platform. And that all of a sudden opens us up many more business cases for them to build in a much shorter fashion. And I think here it's just a question of, an open architecture lends itself very well to this tooling that can go in and build custom elements directly into the stack. And here we have a huge advantage. Then in terms of developers, I think we will see a time now where development velocity will increase very much over the next couple of years, both with this as supporting tools, with other teams being able to collaborate more in the process, using AI tools from a product team, maybe on e-commerce team, that can actually start building customizations into a very technical product, which wasn't possible before when you build with this. I think that's very exciting and is a great place to be in.
Yeah, it's a great place to be at. wondering in 5 years from now on if I'm gonna, type some prompt like, "Hey, build me a B2B e-commerce on Medusa because I'm selling like 10,000 or 100,000 parts, and this is the file. Can you do it?" I'm like, I believe it might happen faster
So
than we expect."
yeah, and so I think, I mean, it's no secret that we also building internal tooling in Medusa to work on our platform and helping developers get there quicker. And I think what some of the examples we've seen is being able to, for instance, just one prompt your way to say, "Hey, I want product reviews." That's not built into Medusa, but because the platform is open and back to this whole modular architecture, what it does in Medusa is goes in and create another module has the name product review and build the business logic that you kind of expect to have in the solution, and even goes away to a front end implementation and the visual parts of it. And it's not just bespoke to what our AI can do. This is just AIs with an open stack. You can really make some magic happen that is very difficult in closed systems. So uh, I think that speaks quite heavily to this idea of AI being a strong partner to open source in the future.
Right. At the beginning, you've mentioned that the business complexity usually, and I don't know also for a fact, they usually require some integrations between ERP system, PIM system, CMS, WMS, and everything around. So in an e-commerce full of plugins and third-party integration, uh, how do you ensure extensibility doesn't come at the cost of performance or developer experience?
It's a good question, and I think to us the core thing is maybe getting back to your question around being a monolith and versus being a platform that actually have a modular architecture. When you have multiple systems you need to integrate with and work with, one of the most important thing is that the system you want to integrate with is built for this extensibility so that it allows you to hook into workflows. As just one example, we have a case right now with a football club, which I think is pretty good example of how this how a small thing here of being open can change a lot. So classic thing that anyone that have been a soccer fan or any sports fan in general have tried to buy tickets online. You can never buy the merchandise and jerseys from the same place where you buy your online ticket to the stadium. And a key problem here is your card and the system that powers this are two separate ones. So usually merchandise is like an e-commerce system, and you have a ticketing system sitting on the side. And these operate not in coalition, but independently. In Medusa, because of this openness we have, we make it very simple for you to say, hey, if you want to create a card that where it's possible to add a ticket from a separate system that's not Medusa, you can just inject that directly into the card, and then you move on with an order flow as you would usually. And this is for many sort of completely abnormal, because I haven't seen platforms where you were able to kind of just stitch in your existing system and make it work as an integrated part. And that is taken to the extreme in Medusa. This is like one example of the card module. But you can imagine around the stack where on the back end you have so many workflows with all of the different operating systems you have as a B2B business. And being able to link that up by just hooking into workflows, building custom modules for whatever logic that needs to be handled is so much easier when you have it all in one system like Medusa. So that's one of the key things we do to enable more integrations to happen.
Okay, but like in traditional commerce platforms, at some point when your complexity is getting much higher, you have to choose sometimes over the flexibility or maybe speed. So, what trade-offs do brands face when choosing flexibility over speed? And how does Medusa help reduce that friction?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the ways to look at this trade-off is what type of uh, is this short term and long term, and what type of flexibility do you really need in the business. So if I take the one extreme example where I don't think our flexibility is needed at Medusa, sort of a very simple D2C shop, I'm selling 10 different t-shirts in 5 different colors, and I basically need some payment functionality and a place to store my customers. Well, that's great. That is pretty easy to get started with on any platform here, and maybe even this custom element is not something you think of, at least not in the very early years, and probably not something that will make you switch to a more flexible platform, because you just want something where you don't even need developers, where you can get spin it up and get running. Um, and here I think there are excellent platforms out there in the SaaS space to get started. I think where you mostly see sort of this question of, do I need to be very flexible, or do I need to have speed to market come in, is when you get to a certain scale and you start seeing there are custom elements to be built. And what we see here is there's flexibility in terms of you can build a SaaS application, take that in, and basically get started very quickly. But what you realize is the custom elements, building all of these customizations into the platform, integrating with outside systems and so on, that ends up taking a lot of time. So it's actually that sort of working in a multi-platform system where you need to connect to other systems, that will take a lot of time and reduce speed to market. So even if you can get online, it's still gonna be on the operational side and the backend side a mess, because these integrations are not as seamless to make. And then we have the long-term flexibility of saying, all right, maybe you have speed to market from starting up the platform and building some a bit hacky integration to your existing systems. But then as you go further down the line and you want to build more custom logic, more custom experiments into the platform, if you've chosen a platform that's not open for this, time to market will at that time be very much compromised, because it takes much longer for you to ship new features when the platform was not made for this agility. So I think you can think of it both in terms of your initial implementation and the integration stack and custom elements you need here, but also over time you will need flexibility to be able to build custom features. And here, choosing something that's very, very quick to get up and running might lead to difficulties later on.
Okay, well, Nick, I'm run out of the questions. So basically, thank you so much for sharing your insight today. For me, it's clear that Medusa is not only addressing many of the challenges brands face with traditional commerce platform, but also help shape a more flexible and open future for e-commerce itself. Um, from architecture choices to community-driven development and the evolving role of an AI, it's been fascinating to hear how Medusa is approaching the future of custom commerce. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll definitely be keeping, and of course, our listeners also should be keeping an eye what's next for Medusa in 2025 and beyond.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here and speaking, Sebastian. And anyone that want to get in touch, they can find Medusa, and I'm happy to take a conversation on some of these elements as well.
Yep. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. And you can